Karim and Mathieu have seen the films for the first time. I will give you a moment to digest these impressions. It's, I think, a very intense screening. So let's start for the moment with you. And actually, before we speak about the images themselves, let's speak a bit about your practice as filmmakers. I'm very curious in which way keeping a distance from your protagonists was important for creating these two films. Maybe let's start with you, Valentina, and talk about your experience with making this film. I hope you can use this.
Thank you. Yes, for clear, to do Fate, there was important things for me and Bastian. Was more the word distance was the balance, the key word for us, because we have to destroy in the first moment completely the distance between us and the community and the master, and rebuild a relation with him and with the guys of the community, and then to do Fate like a movie, try to find every day and every minute, I can say, every time that we decide to play, record and stop, to decide the balance and where we are. And one important question is that I think usually very important in documentary movie and documentary field is what is the difference between truth and reality. We try to describe a reality, a strange, very hard, a strong reality, and also we want to show the truth for the first time about this story. That is a story with a lot of shadows and a lot of dark part, like the white, black and white that we use for the camera. So for me, one of the key and very important decision, I want to say thanks to my producer Donatella Palermo to give me the possibility to do Fate in this way, is the time that we spend with the main characters, because we stay inside this community for 5 months, and is a very long time in general for a documentary movie. In this difficult situation is like a life. And this time give us the possibility to go very inside the community, to disappear, and also to protect themselves, protect us, and protect the movie, and find this kind of balance. And also this kind of choose translate in aesthetic way.
Yeah, that
like
would have been my question, actually. Yeah. Can you share your discussions on how to translate this balance into a visual form of the film?
Sure. So basically, that's the point, that we wanted to tell the story from inside, for a very simple reason that we want to tell. How is it? Well, actually, you said it before. Basically, so we want to tell it from inside. So for me, what is very important is the closeness. And for me, shooting it means I want to be close when I want to show something close, and I want to be far away. So what I did, if I was shooting always with a 35 millimeter, almost always, not everything, but most of it, what gives me this kind of closeness that I have, and that translated it for the public, and about the distance. So one is being really inside, being really close with them all the time, and after some time I understood that the black and white actually is my personal distance. So what I didn't want to show the colors of this place, because for me they're not existing actually. So there are many reasons why black and white, but this is, in the end I understood after half of the film, that this is my personal distance of their world to their world.
It's interesting to think about distances and closeness in relation to those films, because the strategy Luise and Helena chose was not changing the color, but they used proximity and distance in a very different way, actually. I think you are also very close to your protagonists, but your idea and Luise's idea of intimacy and closeness is maybe a different one than in Faith. Could you describe your method? Maybe?
Yes, it's really interesting. So first of all, maybe Luise would love to be here, of course. She's in Japan. She has a residency. That's why I am here instead. But we work together closely. So Luise, so I think it really had to do with the place and with the people we met. So it's impossible to answer that question without talking a little bit about this place. And Luise went there for 3 years, again and again. It's a school in Bielefeld, in Bethel. It's like foundation, but it's almost like a whole neighborhood. I mean, it's not almost, it is. And it was founded for people who have epilepsy, so now it's much broader. Anyway, so she was asked, actually she was offered to do a commission work first. So she went and looked if she was interested. And she had to go several times, and at some point, I remember she met a girl who had to leave that community also, because it's a community. And she was really afraid of that. So, and this was the point where Luise got really interested. Also, of course, this place is very, very effective, or it's very special to be there. I came in much later. I also did research with her, but it was already, Luise already knew the protagonist instead of Miriam, who came in even later. But so, and the choice was to, I think, or what I very often see, like the tendency, if you have people who are, I don't know, who have they are really strong, they are really decisive when to stop and so on, but that you have like this handheld camera to follow any action you have, because you think it gives more freedom or something in this. And we had a different thought on this, and thought, no, we have a very close cadrage mainly, and they have the freedom to escape inside this. And there you also see some characters like André, for example, who is super precise and who loves, you can shoot him like for hours, I think, and he would love it, because he's like, he wants to do things with like perfectly, and he loves to be seen doing this. And then you have others who are impatient, and the changes, and I see it here now, I mean, in the images, because they are not all of the same quality, I think, now.
Luise mentioned that her concept of intimacy is very much linked to allowing for borders,
Yes.
for allowing the characters to have a space in which they can exist. Which
yes, to
cannot
create
be,
these distances. Yes. It's like, I think it's really important for her, especially, but it's about this respect, to build up this distance, to get closer, but not in a, I think it's just this belief that when you see someone cry, it's not what really moves you, but it's like, here you really have this, I think you have the right distance, but it's obviously, I mean, we can discuss it, like how it is for others.
So the intimacy you are trying to create is not based on a reaction to an emotion, but
the intimacy, I mean, it's to really share this place. And I mean, I think in the text you mentioned, it's also this, like, I'm really part of the situation, as is Luise. For example, when we shoot, we don't disappear. I think it's really obviously, and so are the images now. So you see it. This is for me. It's really intimate. For example, I build like when I'm behind the camera. For me, it's the closest relationship I have, even though I have the camera in between. I mean, it sounds maybe paradoxically, but it's not for me. It's like really. Sometimes it's almost like touching someone, but in a very gentle way because you don't. So it's. And this for me is definitely intensity because it's also focus and a concentration on someone or a space or
let's switch to the side of perception. Karim and Mathieu are our representatives of the audience right now. Could you describe whether the perception of these films did it feel intimate to you? Was this a term which came to mind when you saw the films?
Okay. Well, they're very different, so it's very hard to talk about the two films in one.
Yes, I know. We like challenges.
I'll speak about the last one first, Faith. What's really striking to me, and it's very interesting to listen to you talking, is that everything that's inside the house, it's all texture. It's very sober, neutral. You see, there's no object, no reality. There are just religious signs. Religious symbols everywhere, and then blank walls, blank everything. And as soon as they're outside and we can see them, getting off of their world to the real world, everything seems so real, the trees, the beach, there's much more sensations there, more people, the kids playing on the grass. And it's like, it reminds me the quotes in the beginning of the film, like these people, it's very interesting to see that they could have a life, but because there's in this insane system, there's still life going on there, but it's not really life. It reminds me of Don Quixote de la Mancha a bit. This idea that they're chasing windmills, and that was an amazing film. Congrats. On the first one, I really like the framing, the narrow cadrage, but especially the editing was very interesting too. It makes the image talk. The way, it doesn't say too much. As you said, it's not emotional. You don't see them cry. You're not having pity of them. Or you're not trying to create emotion from your own. You're very sober. And what's very interesting there is, I love this fragmentary kind of work. It reminds me of Jonas Mekas, this idea that you live, or you live, the spectator, you live in freedom to create his own relationship to the images, to create his own story in his head. You don't tell them everything, So it's my first take on the two films.
So for you, having a distance to the film brings you actually closer to it?
Well, it's yes, because paradoxically, yes, because you can create your own relationship to the film, because it's not super narrative, Not everything is said, not everything, There are so many. They show you images, but you create yourself the links, the connections, the contrast. A lot of symbols too. I love the water symbol and. This idea that everything is transitory, it's a film about transition, sexual transition, first experiences, the fact that she will depart, all this transition she's going through. So yes, I think this creates intimacy in a very interesting way.
Yeah, no, it's interesting to have the two films screened together. It's not that they're super different, but it's very different ways of looking at the world. And I think, for example, your film, what was really beautiful was the film itself, but also what's not in the frame and how we imagine what's outside of the frame. And there's a way that the surface, which is very, this is a more sculptural film that when I look at you guys of what you did, and I think what I felt here was like I was watching these fragments that I could, I think one thing you said that's really great, that you can, create your own sort of narrative because of the way things are displayed, and it's very open, and I think that's super beautiful for a film, and it's very refreshing these days because I think we live in a moment that everything is there's hyper plotting for everything. I think the the TV series phenomenon, like, you know, things need to happen at, you know, at every second. There needs to be a twist, and there needs to be causality, and there needs to be. So I think what was very beautiful with the first film was this sort of tactile energy that it had. You know, for me, it reminded me of another sense, which is not only visual and sound, but there was, like, you know, there was this, you know, surface, and also allowed me to imagine a lot what was outside of the screen, which is always really great and exciting. So I think it's interesting, but however, when you talk about intimacy, I think it's an intimacy that happens through a different sort of sense. You know, for me, it was an intimacy that happens through tactile, and through the fact that, you know, I was free to imagine. And I think it's different than what we think of intimacy, in the sense of being very close, or being very of closeness. I think closeness doesn't necessarily mean intimate. So I think that was really great. And then on your film, I'm still, it's boom, boom, you know, I mean, it's, I've done a couple of scripts about sects, and I studied some of the leaders of sects and how they are, and so I was very disturbed throughout the whole film, and I think it's a good thing that I was very disturbed, because it didn't seem that, and I kept feeling that the whole time, that I didn't seem that they were being shot. You know, it felt, and this is something that I think it's really interesting. You shot this on 35?
No, on a 32mm lens.
Oh, okay, because I was thinking, no, that's not possible. Okay, 32mm. And this is one lens that you use throughout? The same lens, or you change lens? Yeah, okay.
Almost. There's actually a wide angle. There's a wide angle concept in there. What is for one special character?
Okay.
These super wide angles, and then actually we have one more wide angle hidden, and there's one shot, one moment where we went to on a 40, and it was at the end of this long training of Laura, where she breaks down.
Yeah.
Just like in the very end boxing scene where she hurts her hand.
Yeah,
That's a 40, so that was, I wanted to exclude her more, but apart from that.
No, for me it was, of course, shocking, and thinking of man and masculinity, and who was this guy, and his presence, all of that. It was very disturbing, and he was, there was something quite beautiful the way about you capture it. But for me, what was really incredible in the film is that it didn't seem like anybody was shooting them. It seemed they were always there, you know, like, so I think this is something also that it's really important to talk about, which is, it's not observing, but it's capturing. And I think that's what's really great about what you managed to do there. I don't know how many hours you shot, but I assume a lot, right? Because you probably shot every day for 5 months, or not that much, no? Ah, interesting. But then you spend a lot of time with them. So because
we spend every day at least 14, 15 hours inside. Then it was too much for us, also in a psychological way. We have to come out. But the relation with 15 hours inside to shooting 1 hours good.
Okay.
Because we want stay there and catch.
I understand. Yeah.
Like you said, the most important things. And
no, I think it didn't felt like anybody was shooting. And I think that's really, really incredible, you know, particularly for that kind of environment, particularly for that ecosystem, which is so much, you know, based on hierarchy, and it's based, you know, in order, and, like, you know, being so stoic. So I felt there was something really incredible, particularly the scenes where people sort of, you know, so for me, there was a sense of a constant breathing, that you're actually breathing in the same rhythm that your characters are breathing. So there's this synchronicity of the bodies that, like, you know, so I think that was really, really incredible. And at some moments, of course, and I would be curious to hear you about the use of music. At some moments, it felt this very hybrid object, which I think it's great, you know, you think, because it's so absurd that you think it's fiction. And then all of a sudden you sort of shifted into reality, and you know it's not. But I think this is a really powerful element of the film. And I think, talking about documentary, I make, you know, I make films, you know, so I don't like to bring this idea of documentary or not. But here there's something about very, very beautiful moments where they really didn't realize you were there anymore. And I think this is something really difficult that to do with, the moment that there's a camera. And so, yeah, I'm still very taken by it. I think it's an amazing piece of work, and I think it's an amazing way of, and also not judgmental, which I think it's really hard to be in a situation like that and not to judge those characters.
I'm curious how you feel about the devices of fiction, which are in both films. It's sometimes not clear at which point an element was added by the directors, like music in your case. In your case, it's maybe not sure which scenes are staged or not. In a way, both films play a little bit with our sense of trust on what was done, out of which purpose, by whom. Yeah. So there's a certain gray zone. Maybe let's talk a little bit about that. Maybe might you start?
Yeah, the simple things is about the topic about music, because all the music in the movie is music come from the community. We don't use our music, and because for the master is very important. He's also a DJ, because he's like you saw in the last picture. Because he check everything, and so also the music, and I think that the music is a way to control the body and the thinking of the people inside the community. I think that, like Karim said, for me, like director is not very different between documentary and fiction movie, apart the way to do a movie, the time, because sometimes in fiction you don't have time like we have in this case to spend a lot of time with the people is and the great things that every single scene and every single moment in Fate happen in the reality. We never react something, and we never stage or direct the action of the people, of the character. But we use cinematography language. We try to tell a story and to tell with a little storytelling inside and with the camera, and also in the editing. That was a very important moment. The editor was had a lot of respect for the material that we're shooting. He respect the brief of the rhythm inside the picture, and so he's for me, it's a very honor to say, because it's clear that you have the feeling that sometimes they are the actors, because it's but also because it's clear they have a lot of control about body, and like actor, they use the body they work about soul and about body, but. For me, it's very important to say that every single picture happen in front of our eyes, and we wait a lot of time. And this is also, and I restarted with the topic of time to shooting the people that sleeping. We stay there and sleeping with them, but with the camera. It is also our protection, and we wait that the children wake up. And for this reason, I decided in the editing moment to leave one picture. That is the moment when the little child watching the camera. Because for me was like a declaration, like director to say, okay, all the stuff that you saw is true. Because the children can't lie.
I think the notion of control is very interesting when we talk about faith. At some points, I feel a little bit like you want to control our emotions. It's a film which offers really a strong sensation, of course. So I was wondering about the spectator side, whether you felt you were capable of keeping a distance which some might consider a critical distance, so a liberty to oppose this film, or whether you had moments when it was actually taking over the control over you during the viewing experience.
I just want to say, because I think it's really interesting this with the cinematic like forms you use or the strategies, because, and this somehow answers your question as well, I think, because they use so much storytelling themselves. So like all the rituals, like, and the going everyday life. So there are certain climax all the time. You know, you have then these celebrations when, I don't know, they have been there for 3 years. Or so. All these things. It's like the music. It's like in there already. So I especially felt this today when I watched it the second time, to understand that it's somehow in this whole situation anyway, and you just make use of it, and that's what then for me also makes it possible to accept it in a way, because it's not forced like from outside, you know. And this is a big difference, I think.
Yeah, just a small thing exactly. So this is an important point, and something what is clear that they are dramatizing their everyday life all the time. They're creating all these kind of actions, and they are completely used. They have no privacy at all. So when they go to the bathroom, there will be someone else standing next to them. So it's completely normal. So that's the point, that there's a complete lack of privacy in the whole everyday, 24/7. They have no place to hide. So for them, if they would sit on the bathroom and you would enter with the camera, you know, they would think like, well, someone is entering, who cares? They would just stay there and continue, you know. And then we talked a lot about cinematic tools, because of course it's very easy. Or sometimes it asked us to say like, well, okay, maybe we take a nice wide shot from a little bit above, and then we're having them hold them, and then maybe a big black thing over them, and they will be really dangerous, or you know, and extreme religious, and but we cut them, so we didn't shoot them in that way, because we noticed that all these kind of things to be like a little bit above or under. So we said no, we really want to be close. We want to be on eye level. We want to on their eye level all the time. And we don't want to create something visually that pushes this kind of stories, because they're already so strong, and they have to show it to us, not we're creating it.
Yeah, and it's really interesting because the control, you see that in the cult, the control is touch both sexes, but you film it in a way that you emphasize the suffering of the women, you know, and that's very interesting. Why did you make that choice?
You mean about the suffering and
physical suffering of a female, and you know, the way they used in the sexual way they use and everything.
It's clear that for me it was very difficult, also like director, but also like women director, to watch something and to try to tell without judge, but also it's clear that is not my point of view, is not my life, and I'm not agree about a lot of things, and pity, but it's clear that great of violence is directly against the women inside the community, and so there was the way that I found that the women become the main character. For me, is not the master, the center of this world. Is the three girls, the mother of the children is Laura, the girl that have the strong training, and the other little girl that have another training. So my way to tell this story and respect myself, and also to try to tell something with this movie, as to choose the women like main character, but it's clear it was very tough and very difficult, and in Fate there's some scene. I think that every director fall in love with some scene in the movie, no? But for me, it's clear that one of the most important, emotional, and also is one of the scenes that have my idea about Fate, about this movie, is the training of Laura. This because is not is like a training like a Full Metal Jacket, and but also for me is the main relation in the movie between her and the master, and is like more like a whiplash. The movie is this kind of relation. So yesterday Daniela Persico said very important things. It is is better sometimes when other people talk about your movie, and he says that Fate is also a film against patriarchy, and I think and I hope that is not only this, but I think is a big part of this. In some way, it's a very emotional for me movie, come from heart and my body, and very tough, but also is political movie. Is our position against something, against patriarchy.
In a way, we could say also that your film is transmitting acts of violence and confronting, of course, the audience with it. How do you feel, Karim and Mathieu, as spectators, about this kind of transgression we experience when we see your film? Because in some cases it might be too much for us. So there's also a risk, of course, of harming spectators by crossing their boundaries and not allowing them to have a distance. How do you relate to that kind of experience, and also violence as a part of art?
Well, it's really disturbing, but I think it's really interesting because it really translates the dynamic of that relationship, which is the definition of patriarchy, as you said. I think it really translates the extent of hate that this person has, for a lot of things, and including women. So I think it's, but then, at the same time, you are in a moment where there's this mother, sort of hugging this child, which is also really, really incredibly touching. So it didn't really cross the line for me. I think it was powerful to see, particularly the scene that you're talking about when, she's just like can't do it anymore. But at the same time, I think it allowed me to kind of enter the character of the master in a way that is very rare, and I think it's important that you understand, those souls and those characters, and I think not only to understand, but that we actually relate to them, because they seem like this sometimes. When I was reading a lot of books about this, a bunch of sects, it seems like it's beyond fiction, because it doesn't seem possible, something like that. And so, I think when you see it in action, I think it's really important for us to identify that those relationships, they exist, they're there, and they need to be faced. And I think it's important to feel what the impact of that, and not only not only the level of discourse, but on the level of experience. And I think that's what the film really does.
Yeah, I don't think it crossed the line neither. I like the fact that they kept shooting when a lot of people would have stopped, because it's so hard to watch, and you keep shooting and you keep shooting, and she cannot anymore. But then she stand up again, and it's crazy. It gets it's a level of intimacy with a character that's very rare in a documentary, you know, and it helps you to really understand her and her pain. And I don't think you are fooled, you know, because we could say, okay, so they use cinematical language, so it could make this cult become something cinematical, you know. But no, it doesn't work like that, you know. The aestheticization really plays well with moments of life. And when they're alone with the master, there's something very neutral, and you know, and there's just body suffering. You don't see anything else, and you're not, you know. And it's very interesting because it's not black and white neither. You see that he's also a man, you know, and you try not to judge him. It must have been very hard, but you see he has this moment, you know, and it's I'm very very impressed, and I like the fact that I'm you know, it's very, how did you get there, you know? How do you get inside there and become so invisible? That's very impressive.
The evening is, of course, labeled collapsing distance. So we are not only talking about the distance we experience or the closeness, but also a change of the situation during watching the film. So I'm wondering whether you perceive that we enter into a film with a certain distance, whether a film is for you a foreign object which enters into our life, which we enter with a basic distance and which needs to be broken down, or maybe you see it completely contrarian. Maybe you see it differently in the way that we enter into a film openly and we want the film in our life. Yeah. I'm very curious how you perceive that experience of watching a film. Helena, maybe?
Of course, very differently, but my wish, I was thinking about this question because it's interesting, like my wish when I go, yes, I think I want to be changed by a film. It rarely happens, but if it happens, it's amazing, and it can be like very small things, but there's no rule. Like, I mean, I can't tell you, I know this and this needs me to get involved in a way that it like permeates something, or and I can also very much enjoy if I can keep my distance very often, and of course it helps, like if you have a certain form that is known to me, then it's automatic to me, like really personally, but to me it automatically creates a distance, and it wouldn't, I think I can say it wouldn't affect me as much as when I'm surprised, for example, or when I have to deal with it in this very moment, for example.
Could you be more precise? What is it which automatically creates a distance for you?
I mean, if I watch a genre film, but it's not like that I don't like genre film. Please don't get me wrong. It's just like it's a very different experience, and it's because then you know very quickly what to expect. And I also, of course, we talked about trust. You also want that. I mean, I don't want to be fooled also. So, you know, I don't want to be hintergangen werden. Betrayed, yeah. So I think it's really, really important to create this confidence with the audience, with me in that sentence. But when I know what awaits me, then I let it go, and I know what awaits me. That's fair enough.
You said you want to be changed. Why?
If not, it would be super boring. I mean, we change anyway all the time, but I don't want to stay like this forever.
How about you over there? Do you like to be changed by cinema?
Well, I'll go. I like to experience new emotions, you know, and I love the way the cinema sometimes create emotions that you will never believe possible before seeing seeing the film, you know. And I love the way they're like experiences of the world. It's another way to experience the world, you know. So I don't know if I'm changed at the end of the day, but I'm certainly learned something. Yes.
I think I like to be transported somewhere that I wasn't expecting to be transported. The question of being changed or not. I mean, I like to sleep during films and wake up and then dream of what is in the film. I mean, there's something about that, the way that films somehow take you. You know, for me, it's really great when you're there and then you sleep a little bit, and I actually kind of have these very quick dreams. And then I wake up, and so I think when I say being transported, it's kind of that I mean. You know, it's when you enter this world, which is you don't understand. Like, you know, for example, watching Faith. There was a moment I didn't care about the rules, you know, like I was just somewhere, and I think it's really incredible, you know, when you see this really big thing in front of you, you know, the bodies are like 10 times bigger, everything is like, you know, it's like fantasy land, and I think it's really great when also it does let me inside, and I'm not talking about empathy, because I think empathy is a really not that interesting of a feeling, but I'm talking about maybe being haunted, you know, but maybe being, you know, made me feel things that I didn't really expect to feel. And I think what I'm going to say is a bit contradictory. I think story is super important because it somehow keeps, for me, story is about surprise, you know. It's not about predictability. Story is about being constantly surprised. So I think narrative for me is about surprise. But I also love when the story is actually, I mean, I'm really interested in character. I'm really interested in people. So I love when the story is there, but it's not, you know, and I love when it's classic and it's fine, you know, and I think if it's really classic, then it is not boring, it is very surprising. But for me, it's just a bed to construct a world, you know, so it's just, when a film allows me to sort of, you know, be close to the characters and smell them and live with them, I think that's really what interests me when I'm coming to see a film.
Mathieu, you are also a poet, besides being a film critic. So your notion of language might not only be a narrative one. How do you feel about narratives? In both films, we have a very particular approach to narratives. Your film, Valentina and Bastian, starts actually with a narrative introduction. We have a text title, which leads us into the film. In your film, we have fragments of narratives, maybe we could say. Maybe also fragments of language. How did you experience those?
Well, I'm less a poet than a scriptwriter now, you know. But yes, I come from this very weird and specific form of writing where you don't have a narration in a poem, or not really, you know. You have images, you have sensations. So I'm very attracted to your film for that, to the way you edit it, to the way you give for people to see, to touch, to smell more than, you know, more than just telling a story. And in your film, it's more narrative, but it's also because, you know, the subject is so strong. You cannot, you know, if you had done something more, you know, fragmentary, or it will not have been had such an impact. You know, you had to keep. It's not classical, but a little, you know, a little bit of narrativity. You know, so I think it just depends on the film and on the point of view you want to have. You know, you find a subject and you try to find the best, the point of view that nobody had before, you know. Maybe it's because you talk about a period of the life of your subject that nobody talks about. Maybe it's about because you talk about a witness of history that you find a point of view, a temporality, something very different, you know, and something that fits your subject, and you stick to it. And both films do that, you know. They stick to their choices, you know.
By the way, I'm happy to open the floor for your questions. There should be an audience microphone. There's one. It will soon reach you. I have just one question while the microphone is traveling. It's mine. Okay. Actually, when we talk about language, what comes to mind in my case is that actually language and narrative offers us a frame of taking a distance and being oriented within a situation and describing it. So when this distance collapses, of making sense, of following a narrative, where do we end up, I'm wondering? Do we end up in chaos? Do we end up in being lost? Does this help us to get closer to the world or not? I'm very curious about your thoughts on that. Do you like getting lost? I think your notion of being transported is very interesting because it implies that we can overcome this limitation of space or narrative.
Yeah, it's interesting because I spent many years of my life hating narrative deeply because I thought it was something that was a straitjacket, particularly in cinema, that, I think in literature and in other ways of expressing yourself. And for me, narrative was something that really, as somebody who was making something, it always felt like a straitjacket. But at the same time, it's really interesting in 2020 to think about narrative and to think about attention span and to think about concentration and to think about, how one can play with narrative. I think it's not an accident that Parasite won 4 Oscars because it's twist upon twist upon twist, and I think it's really more. It's like as if language was not it. It doesn't matter what language it is, but if you know the genre, it's like genre is almost a new language, so if you understand the codes of genre, then you go, and I think there's this over. So I think for me, at the same time that I do have this very conflictual relationship to narration, into narrative within cinema, I think one of the most interesting moments in cinema was perhaps before narration took over. If you think of the 1920s, if you think of a lot of the French films that were made, before film became full on narrative, there was something quite amazing about them, and that's what made me want to make films. But at the same time, there's this, and how do you keep this going and interesting, this meaning the audience, within this context. So I think I prefer to be a bit these days more strategic. And I think it's really interesting to have some elements of narration to just keep these guys interested, in what's going on the screen, because I think it's so hard to get people here. And then when they're here, I think it's important that they're really here, they're very engaged. And I think narrative for me has become, as I said before, an alibi to do character portraits, because just character portraits without. So I think it's how you negotiate and also how you want to, what you're aiming for. I think it's so important to have our films in cinemas because otherwise I have the feeling that they're being now. I had a panel this afternoon about streaming and VOD platforms and blah blah blah, and I have the feeling like what we do is just going to evaporate. Like you go to these platforms and you spend more time trying to find what you want to see than what you see, and then sometimes you don't even see. So I think for me, it's a really strategic question, and the power of sitting there and seeing the films we saw today, it's really huge, and I think we really have to fight for that space to exist. And for me, it's like it's like dancing, like how do I get you? How do I seduce you when I'm on the dance floor, and how do you seduce me? And I think narration is undoubtedly, something important.
No, because this subject, I hear it more and more, like when I talk to filmmakers, this getting back to narrate. I have nothing against it. I love to be a story being told to me, read, seen, and so on. But this with the audience, because when I look at I know a few, but not even very well, but I don't know who this audience is, and I can't tell. So when I couldn't imagine, this is a question, how is this audience for me? For me, it's really, really abstract. I hope that all these people are very different. I don't know.
I think it's not about knowing audience because it's impossible, but I think I think this is different today, but I'm very shocked every time I go to the cinema. Everybody has white hair. Most of the people have, so how do I get people without, I have white hair too, so it's okay, but how do I get people excited about, because it's so powerful, when a film transports you somewhere and changes you, or So it's more of a question that I'm putting up, like how do we gauge it? Of course we don't know. I don't think we know who the audiences are, but I do know that the audiences are getting older, and I think that's, for me, it's too bad.
Maybe
So
maybe
it's just a generic observation.
There's a question.
Sorry, now you went very far away, and I would like to come back to ask the question about the film that I've been waiting for so long. I'm not so old, I hope. And first I want to say thank you to Valentina and Bastian, also to you, but I want to ask a question directly to you. It was really mind-blowing. It was really an experience to watch this film, and I could feel really every minute, like from in the beginning not so much, but the more I stayed, the more strong it became, and I could feel that you stayed for so long, because what you achieved with this, what you got, it was really incredible. Especially the falling asleep with the people and waking up with them is something that we don't see so often, I think. And I think it has a lot of empathy, this film. That's why it is also so interesting for me to watch, because I can also feel the side of the master, of the people who are in the sect. It's not like a wall that we usually have when we talk about a sect. This makes it very special for me, that I don't only see hate, I see a lot of love there too. And it makes it very also confusing, and it opens a really big discourse, because I can see that what is happening there could be happening with everybody, everywhere. This kind of abuse and manipulation, being dependent on something, being lost. This is something that happens not only in a sect but everywhere. So was very important for me to say also that this is one main thing of the film, that it's not only the sect, but it's a topic that is like everywhere around us, and this is very nice. And I have a very concrete question also. I was wondering, because the master, he's obviously a control freak, and he's controlling a lot of, he's controlling everything. How did you deal with? I guess he was trying to control you as well, no? So how was this actually? How could you resist to be not controlled by him? He was probably controlling how the film would look like, what you would tell, who you would talk with, and all these things. I imagine this, and this I want to know.
It's a what is it? Collective psychosis situation, and there's a lot of brainwashing, a lot of control. So of course we were controlled a lot, and they tried to brainwash us all the time, of course. So that's why we had to leave every day for the night. At least we were dreaming them, but still, to talk to each other without them having them close, to set up our mind again. Because really, when we went out, it felt really like there's something like a big, piece of bread in my head. I don't know who I am anymore. Every day it was same thing for all of us, and then just how to front it. I think I just want to put humor in the room.
No, it's true. One of the best solution was I said often that there's two movies. One is Fate, and one is the movie that there's not here. That is a movie about us that try to do Fate. Because I think that what you said is the truth. Was very difficult, because he's a manipulator, and so he try every single day to put the crew inside the community, and was a challenge. And I think that he saw the movie. He saw Fate, and he understand for the first time he lose, because and also because it's clear that we are not manipulated, and also was very like Bastian said, that one of the most important gun in our hands was the humor.
Yeah.
Because in this place all the stuff are very tough and very serious, and also he's the master, and no one had a real relation with him. It's a relation of power. It's not emotional relation. So we are the only people that had with the master paritaria, the same kind of relation.
Yes.
And we use the humor, and also we use the art. I feel that he discovered in some moment that he is human.
Yes.
He is not God.
That's good, actually. Yeah.
Thanks for your words.
Yeah. Thank you very much. Really, because actually, that's what I it's the big goal. I mean, we talked every night, and we always thought like, well, there's something going on in there that then at a certain point you start to compare it to your society you live in, to your family dynamics, to your work situations, everything. And we thought, wow, if people would come to that point, that would be really amazing. And so thank you. That's all.
Yeah, thank you.
In the past, we had a guest here at Critics Week, filmmaker Antonin Perechatko. And after our debate, we were sitting in the bar, like we will do tonight, by the way, talking, and he was telling about the fact that he is making a film on the protests in France, the Yellow Vest protests. And he was fascinated by the fact that when he was shooting with a 16mm camera in the middle of the violent situation, nobody attacked him or thought he was an intruder in the situation. Policemen and protesters came to him being fascinated about the camera. So for some reason he became an island of peace as an artist in the middle of a very chaotic reality. I was curious about your experience of being present with the camera. Like, did you have a experience of changing the situation through this device? Like, did you feel it had the power to really influence the situation?
I mean, of course, it's a fear. No, actually, we don't want to influence too much, but we are, of course, because we are there. I didn't think it was different. I mean, I think being there already changed so much, and then if I shoot or not, it's like more or less the same thing. After a certain time, in the beginning, of course, shooting is a big thing, but then after a certain time, we're always there around. Sometimes we shoot, sometimes we don't. So it's more, I think, our presence. But what really happens is that that the fact that we do a film is something like a catalysator, and it makes things happen quicker. I think nothing happened that wouldn't have happened, honestly. But I'm sure that some things happened quite quicker, and in the time that we were shooting, and maybe if not, they would have happened a year later or something.
And also a little bit, I think about the camera that there's a lot of mirror in the place, and a lot of mirror in the movie. But they watch in the mirror, and they watch what the master want that they are. So we hope sometimes that the camera was a way to this guy and this girl to watch for the first time themselves in another way. And I don't know if maybe nothing happened after this movie, but for example, Gabriele ran away when we finished the shooting. It's clear it's not our fault, it's not our goal, but maybe our presence, also because it was the first time that after 20 years people come from outside, go inside this community, stay for 5 months, and also create a relation, emotional relation, change something. So a little bit hope that maybe with the camera they watch themselves for the first time in another way, for another point of view that is not the point of view of the master.
Are there more questions from your side?
Yeah, I have
Yeah.
a question. Now we moved a bit away from it, but this notion of your expectation of the cinema, I was wondering, because you were talking a lot about being surprised and getting new things and getting new perspectives. And so I started thinking, and actually for me it's more getting deeper and getting to know more about a feeling that I already had. So it's more about going deeper into this recognition of a feeling or of an experience. So I was wondering, like, I just wanted to challenge a bit this view of the new and of the innovative being something interesting, because it also sounds like really hard as a filmmaker to constantly come up with something completely new and innovative and a feeling that nobody has ever felt before. So yeah, I wanted to challenge that maybe a bit and hear your opinions. And then also as a question, phrased more as a question, maybe there is something in the films that you made, that you worked on, that was a feeling that you had before, an old feeling, and that you got deeper into, that you learned more about.
Tell us.
I think surprised me not sleeping. That's all I meant about being surprised, you know, like to keep you engaged. And I think it's, that's all. But about the feeling, yes, I think that's, for me, always sleeping just a little bit, but not throughout the whole thing. So that's what I mean about surprising, you know, that it's the sense that, you know, that something keeps you going. You know, some people call it causality, some people call it, you know, different things, but I think it's important to keep you engaged, you know, that's what I meant by surprised. And I think it's always about the feeling, right? I mean, it's always about, for me at least, it's always about a song, maybe. It's normally how I think of a film and about a character. Then everything else sort of comes after it. But it is certainly about a sensation. And I think it's like when you're composing music, you know, there is a main rhythm, you know, and I think that rhythm is something that you ride around, you know, and I think it's really about, I agree with you, it's about the feeling, it's about a sensation. And it's not that complicated. That's the less complicated and the more distilled, I think, the better it is.
Well, that's a very, very interesting question, and actually it's a very old one too. And in France we had Les Anciens et les Modernes, who talked about what is new, what is not. Is there anything like a new form of art, a new form of... But, you know, so people are very divided by this question still nowadays. I think it's a question of perspective, you know. A novelty can be just a new perspective on an ancient feeling, as you say. So that's more what I wanted to say. You know, there are some films, you know, that are, you know, they take you to places you really didn't expect, you know. The way the way it is framed, the way it mixed two feelings that are so different and that you've never mixed before, you know. That's a new feeling to me, but it's not new, of course.
It's interesting to that you mentioned the aspect of mix, because we didn't really talk about the combination of the two films. Would somebody like to comment on what happened through them? Like, did you feel, for example, that your film was framed or intervened in a way by seeing Luise's film and Helena's film before? How about you, guys?
No, I mean, I think I was just very pleased with diversity, and I think that's what's beautiful about this program today, is that, you know, there are very, very different ways of looking at the world. There are very different ways, different perspectives of the world, but they're both very affectionate about what they're talking about. And I think, you know, in none of the films I felt a sense of distance, in the sense of alienation. You know, I felt that both films were very engaging, and I think it's so refreshing to see diversity in cinema today. You know, that's what I was saying before. I think that the TV series phenomena is like so infecting cinema, and I think, you know, the sense of diversity is really, and I think festivals are a great place for this, and I think when festivals push those boundaries in how it's done today. So I don't think it's a question of framing, it's more a question of friction, and I think that the friction is really, really refreshing, you know.
I agree totally, and but also, you know, as I said before, the human mind cannot help but make connections. So watching the two films in a row, I was making connections, you know, little things like the fact that in both films there is a drill, you know, there is an exercise, a repetition that is imposed, you know, to the subject. You know, the film focuses on women. You know, there is a lot of things like that. The fact that they live in community and that are outside of the world. The fact that, you know, their relationship and every I agree. There are very different perspectives on the world, and at the same time, you can see that all human is human. You know, and that we're not so different, even if we live in a kung fu / Catholic cult somewhere in the Italian mountain. You know.
So creating a connection is the reflex, not finding the distance.
Yes, for me.
Yes, I also think so. I completely agree. You look for some things, but this humanity thing and like how complex, and that we all need rules somehow, and we rely on them is interesting. But then, it starts with the format. I thought this was, I didn't think about before, but when your film started going, like the cadrage opens, so, and then we have this stroboscopic light used by them to emphasize something, and then here it's like a method also to measure like so many little things also.
It's fascinating. When we picked and combined the films, I didn't realize that they both have like a stroboscopic.
I didn't think about it either.
Beginning.
I realized it today.
Would you like to comment?
Yes,
yeah.
I have a question. Thank you very much for these very beautiful two films, and also for this talk, because I think it's really bringing a lot much after this experience of screening. I wonder if you both screened this film in this community, and what was this decision depending on, like, because we are talking now here a lot about the relation with the audience, and for many filmmakers the relationship with the topic and with the subject and with the film ain't with the screening when you are ready to share with the audience. But I think with such a both case, is it for you about ending or having conclusion with the topic by going to these people and screening or watching this with them? Especially Valentina, when you were talking about the mirror, which was fascinating in the film, all the time I was watching, I'm wondering how much are these people are ready to see themselves through you, through your camera.
No, I guess. Thank you for beautiful and difficult question. You think there's a lot of me inside this fate. I think that for sure there's fascinating and for radical choice. Is a challenge because me and Bastian do a short movie about this community 11 years ago, and we can't able to finish the movie 11 years ago because we are too young and too traumatized about this story, and so there's a lot of me about my, I think, courage to come back and finish this story. And also I do other movie before Fate, 2 movie, 1 documentary, 1 fiction movie. And for me, Fate is the summary of my topic. And now it's very interesting that you can recognize yourself when finish a movie and your topic. You understand that you do every time the same movie, and maybe because I need to arrive to Fate, because I always tell a story about identity. People close in the time, in the space. 1 documentary was about miners, the last mine in Italy, and the fiction movie was about genocide, that is happen in Switzerland is not known in the rest of the world. So it's a film about. I think that I do film about identity and war and resistance, and I hope to do dangerous movie in some way. I think that when I watch your movie, I think that we are similar because it's a dangerous movie and freedom movie. Because my idea is to put the audience in a stranger world and give the audience the possibility to live an experience and not only watch something and says, okay, this is a group of mad people that are in Italy, but at the end you are completely inside of this community. And when I finished the movie, my goal was maybe you come back at home and thinking we are sure that in our family or with in our relation or in the school we are so different from the master. And for the language we try, I think, because I like a lot your movie for the same reason, to give the possibility to the audience to feel and not only to watch. So I hope to answer your question because it was very difficult, but thank you.
Maybe we can have one more question and then move on, because we are about to have another conversation at 11:30 in the bar called Oxymoron. I'd like to use the opportunity to invite you already. We will talk with some of the guests of Critics Week about their relation to film criticism, obviously. So I will repeat it soon.
Yeah. First of all, thank you. And in a way, it goes a bit back to what Mathieu had started to ask, which had never been answered. How did you get in there? Which means, how did you approach them, and what did you tell them that you were after? And then it goes actually a bit back to that. Did you show the film to them in the end, and what were their reactions? And I think that's actually a question I would have in both cases. How was that also in the film, making a topic for you to face the viewer, the viewer as the protagonists?
Well, Luise showed the film there. I wasn't there, but I can imagine very well how it was. I'm sure they were like, they celebrated in a way, because they it was very much about participation. So already when we shot, they knew, it's interesting because somehow they have, like, once a week they have an assembly in this school, and they are very much used to go on stage and perform. So they are very, they know, they know it well, better than me or us, maybe, I don't know. And it's a very joyful experience, and I'm pretty sure it's like this. But also because it's not. I don't know if I can say that, but for me, I guess, I don't know. It's a speculation, but I think it's quite close to them in many parts. And but there was like, I don't know. No, it was the other question, but just saying about like this. What did and you answered very nice. I think this freedom is really, really important, and it keeps me going. And I think it's not close, not at all. Like it's opening something again. And this goes also for the process. For me, I don't know how it's for you, but I mean, this is like really Luise's film in a way. So But this collaboration exists and continues for so many years now, and we keep learning, and I keep understanding. For me, it's such a beautiful invitation, for example, to enter this place, which I might not have like discovered, but through her, with her, and then you go on working together, and you get to a new stage. You meet people you didn't meet. So it's a very rich thing to do to it.
I try to answer to first question, how can we get in contact and inside. When I came back after 11 years to the master, and he opened the door, and I respect some rules that also, like crew, we have to respect. We dress in white like them to go inside, otherwise we are not pure people. And the master watched to me and says, I know that you come back because the God sent me to you. And I spend all the time to destroy this kind of thinking, because I can use in a bad way and betrayed my character and says, yes, for sure I'm here because I am a sign of God. And we spend all the time to destroy this idea and to create sane relation with the master. And also the most important thing was that I was very clear. For the first time I said, I come back, I won't tell the truth. I'm not young like 11 years ago. I'm ready. But you have to tell me all the truth about the community and give me the possibility to show everything. And also I prepare the master to the effect of fate. I said, you know that the cinema is a very important gun. And you can fate, maybe a lot of people thinking bad things about you, and you have to prepare. And for me was like a declaration. I won't tell the truth, and I don't want responsibility about I don't want to betray you, but also I don't want to betray me and the truth. And so when they watch the movie, because they watched the movie before the premiere in ITFA, I go there and they want that I show the movie inside the community. And I think with the producer that was not a good idea to stay alone with the 20 people and show the movie. And also we decided to use a neutral land. And so we rent a cinema for 2 hours, and they arrive, and was very shocking because the master says are 22 years ago that I never go in a cinema, and it's the power of our job to change the world. And also they watched the movie and was very, very emotional screening for sure. And also, I think that he understands which kind of movie I do. And he says, Valentina, Fate is a very strong movie. It's very tough. But this is the truth. You don't betray me because we are also what you show. And so if the truth is tell like this, I can say nothing. And so obviously Fate is not finished because the master call me every day to tell bad things. But yes, this is the lead in shortly the emotional trip in this.
May I add a small thing, because just when Valentina started talking, something came in my mind. So she said, well, she went in, and second step I went in as well, and we see all these people there, and they come towards us like it's 12 years later now. They come towards us like friends, old friends we know for a long time, and we just met yesterday, So they would just like turn around, there you are, and hug us. And look in the eyes, and it was like it was so crazy, because for them they didn't meet, they don't meet so many people. So for them, this time 12 years ago, this month or what was it, where we've been in there, was so intense, and then they could remember all the emotions perfectly, and they just connected immediately to this moment 12 years ago. And that for me was really strong, because it was the first impact. We understood in what state they are mentally.
So I'd like to move on, and thank you very much, Mathieu, Karim, Helena, Bastian, and Valentina, for joining this conversation. Thank you for staying. And as I mentioned, we will move on to the Oxymoron, which is very close downstairs, actually, to have another talk. We are happy if you want to join. See you.